So normally, obviously, during non-COVID times, we would be running a live tour, you know, coming through in 45-minute groups. We did this last year with this project, Park Life, a project of ours. My name is Michael Roper. I'm from Architecture. It is a mouthful. Yeah, normally we would be running tours on site. And obviously with COVID this year, we then had to change tact a little bit. We thought that the live component for this project would be me walking around the house with an iPad, showing everybody through live. But with the current lockdown restrictions and all of the numbers, it isn't really an appropriate response or an appropriate approach. So what we've got instead today is a virtual tour of the house. Decided to keep it as a live event. It's good to keep me on my feet, and it's nice to be able to have a conversation with you guys. So what I'm going to be doing is taking you through a real capture that has been used to create a virtual three-dimensional tour of the house, which maybe some of you have checked out on the website already. Before I get into that, I'd really like to begin by acknowledging and paying my respects to the Bunwurrung and Woiwurrung peoples of the Kulin Nation, the traditional custodians of the land on which we are gathered physically and virtually. I would like to acknowledge that the sovereignty of these lands were never ceded, and I would like to pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and acknowledge all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders here today, also paying my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. So strap yourselves in as we move into a virtual model of this house. I'm going to share my screen, but my host, Victoria, needs to allow me to share my screen. I'll just wait for that to happen. Victoria, if you haven't done that before, it's the little arrow on the share screen button. There's a little upward arrow, and it gives you, I think, a list of 3 things. And I think it's the second item on that list that allows you to let non-hosts share the screen. We're definitely at danger of me moving into ad lib territory again. Are you there, Victoria?
Sorry, Michael.
That's okay.
I missed the question.
Are you able to make me a, I need to be able to share my screen.
Oh, of course. Sorry about that. There we go.
Excellent. And here we go. Okay, so I'll make that full screen. So here we are, everybody, in Williamstown North, the site of our project Park Life. I'll give you a little bit of a, I'll try and move not too quickly around the model in case anybody's got a slow connection, but just looking around here to give you a bit of a sense for the area. So we are going to be moving inside the house. We'll be moving through this capture. But what's interesting about this area is that it was established by the Victorian Housing Commission in the 1940s in a time when there wasn't much housing being built during World War II, and we needed accommodation for return service people. And so this area was built on the principles of the Garden City, so integration of home, streetscape, landscape, and all of the perceived health benefits that go along with being connected to nature, and real benefits, we know. being connected to nature. And so what you can see here is that this is Park Crescent. It has a 15-metre wide nature strip which arcs like a true crescent along the street, and really provides this very generous landscaped park-like setting for all of the houses along the street. Now, unfortunately, the 3D capture doesn't quite allow us to see too much detail of the other houses, but you can kind of glimpse through here that the front yard of the neighbouring houses, many of them don't have front fences. And so the front yard of the house really feels like it bleeds out into the street as an extension of this shared parkland and this shared amenity. The challenge that we had with this particular site was that, as you can see, we're on a corner. And what that means is that the backyard of this house is actually sitting right here behind this timber pavilion that you're seeing. And so it's the backyard of this house which really fronts onto Park Crescent. And so the challenge then for us was, how do we create that as a private realm for private enjoyment while still establishing a sense of generosity and connection to this shared parkland? As we found the property, I might move back to where we were before, over here. As we found the property, there was a 2-metre high fence right on the boundary, and 2 shed structures right on the boundary, which was terminating the continuation of that kind of landscaped arc, was terminating those front yards in a way before getting to the corner. So we wanted to open that up again, so that the continuity of that kind of shared landscape continued through to the corner. Now you can see there is this existing white fence here, but it is a low fence, and there are some other low fences along the street, so it is in keeping with those. But we're not creating a high fence kind of private realm that's interrupting that streetscape, and that's really where this project begins. So without going into that, I'll go into that a bit more later. But if we just move into the house, the door opens for us and we move inside. So here we can see my clients, Richard and Rebecca, who I will also say they've joined in to watch this presentation. They've said that they're happy to answer any questions as well. For anyone who does want to ask questions as we go, you're more than welcome to. You don't have to save them for the end. You can just turn your mic on, and if you're happy to, turn your camera on as well so that we can see you, and jump in with questions. And Richard and Beck are happy to answer some of those as well. So here we are in their work from home study space. We can see through to the main bedroom in there. We can also see into the second guest bedroom slash music room over there. So this is part of the original part of the house. And we did make some modifications here. So what we've done is we've extended the house, and we'll get to it, with a new open plan kitchen dining living area. Now that kitchen dining living area was really kind of sitting here in these spaces in front of us. And that main bedroom was actually 2 spaces, and there was a third bedroom sitting back in behind all of that, which is a very, very small bedroom, almost unworkably small, which has now become a large bathroom instead. So we have made some modifications to the internal layout of the house. Quite substantial functional modifications, but in fact by only removing 2 internal walls and adding 1 new internal wall. So very little modification from a structural point of view, from I guess a cost point of view, but making nevertheless quite a substantial impact on the overall function of the house. What we're seeing here, and it's something that is it's easier to understand perhaps in plan, is a diagonal axis right through from one corner of the existing house right through to the new extension, which is, you can see in the cooler kind of greens and blues beyond there. And you can see that this axis is marked by this row of pendant lights that you're seeing in each of those spaces, one over the study, one over a central gallery space, which I'll get to, and one over the new living areas beyond. And this was really a way of, in a house where it's a small site, or it's not a huge site, there isn't a huge amount of space to create a large extension or, really large oversized living spaces. And so in a house like this, where we're needing to really shape those spaces so that they don't take up too much space, but they still work comfortably, we look for those opportunities to create moments of generosity. And this axis right through the guts of the house is a moment where the whole thing opens up and you can see right through it, and you get this sense of the scale of the overall, while still enjoying the kind of the intimacy of the smaller spaces along the way. So moving through, you can see this gallery space here. See if I can get right into it. So my clients, Richard and Rebecca, are artist and curator, and so this is really a space which allows them to explore their loves and their interests and curate a space within the house. So often art is relegated to corridors, or maybe there's one or two pieces in a living room. But in this house, to have a space dedicated to their artwork was a really nice, I suppose an unusual item to have in a brief, but also proved to be, and maybe I will step back again, proved to be a really a nice threshold between the old and the new house. You can see it creates that moment of transition from one to the other, and also kind of in the heart of the house where there is, or in the middle of the house where there are no windows, and so it's a light protected space as well. So moving through that threshold, we're starting to see the living areas beyond. Maybe we'll step down here. And we're in a dining room here. You can see the kitchen along the wall over there. We're starting to glimpse the living area just beyond. And you can see these aren't really traditionally shaped spaces in a way. They're not square spaces. And to some people, this can seem perhaps a little bit counterintuitive, that on a small site that you'd want to be as space efficient as possible. And surely a rectangle is the most space efficient shape. In fact, what we're trying to do here is to balance a sense of generosity between the living areas and the courtyard space. So had we simply placed a rectangular box onto the side of this house, we would have been cutting a hard straight line through this garden, which would have made the garden feel small, a little mean, and also quite abruptly terminated. Instead, what we've done is shaped that courtyard so that it really pushes into the side of the house here, pushes in under that canopy, and then that outdoor space really starts feeling like it's an equal player and an equal part of these living spaces. And it pinches space right where we don't need it, which is at that threshold or connection area between the dining and the living area. And so what we've really done by angling this wall here and angling the return wall around the living space beyond is create a sense of generosity of the space outside and generosity where we need it inside. So we're kind of pinching space where we don't need it and then giving it to the other. And by ensuring that all spaces work and have their own sense of generosity, everything feels generous rather than just having, if you have a mean backyard, then looking out onto that backyard, things feel small and mean. So it's about striking that balance. And so the angled lines of this extension really allowed us to create the spaces we wanted. And then you can see we've created these, I'm trying to get myself into a spot where we can see it, these kind of curved thresholds in between. So you're not coming to a harsh point, but rather a soft, gentle threshold from one space to the other. And what that means is that it strikes that balance as well between a sense of connection between areas and a sense of delineation or separation, so that this little living area feels like its own cozy little nook, somewhere to sit and watch TV or read a book or have friends over and a chat at the end of the evening, with its own view out that window, out to the greenery and the landscape of the street beyond. But also to feel connected back into the rest of the house and the rest of the living areas. So still having that sense of open plan connection, which I suppose is a more common feature of contemporary living as well. You can see that with the kitchen, we've really so often kitchens are these large objects in a house. So you've got the main wall of the kitchen, and then you've got the island bench, and all of that takes up quite a lot of real estate. We didn't really have the real estate to do that, and so we've gone with a long kind of linear kitchen, and we've also tried to compose its elements in such a way that it doesn't feel too heavy, that it feels a little bit lighter and a little bit more open. So you can see that this overhead element here has an open shelf above for some kitchen items or display items, a hanging rail below to hang kitchen utensils and pots and pans, that it doesn't extend all the way into where the fridge and pantry are, that it floats as a bit of a lighter element. And then that approach is continued in this shelving here. You can see this very fine aluminium suspended open shelving, which continues the kind of the composition of this overhead cupboard and keeps everything feeling very light and open. So you can see also that the material palette is quite earthy. So we've gone with a bagged brick. This is actually the original external wall of the original house. So you can see the external wall there would have continued along. You can see the original window in here with its sill. We've kept all of that. The new bathroom actually sits beyond there. And what we decided to do is to fill that window in behind. So there is actually solid wall there, but to keep the window itself and put a mirrored glass in there as a reminder of the origins of the house, and as a bit of a relic of the original house. But yeah, you can see we've bagged that brick so that it ties in with the rest of the brickwork here. So you can see, rather than painting the brickwork, you get a bit more of you get all the kind of subtle shades and textures of the brickwork rather than over sanitizing it and flattening it. And you get things like this expansion joint. So that's a necessary structural expansion joint in the brickwork, which you ordinarily wouldn't see, but we've curved those bricks in to mark that join in a way to make a feature of that join, and it really picks up on the curved language of the rest of the house. So we've got the very earthy kind of bagged brick. We've got the concrete floor, the burnished finish, so it has a lot of kind of natural variation in its tone, and then the timber as well. So very much picking up on the park, on the kind of colours and textures of the park streetscape, with the greens and the timbers, so the canopies and the trunks, and this almost having a you know, a hunkered down grotto-like atmosphere. It feels very protective. You've got this kind of protective wall around the sides and to the back, from which you then look out into the courtyard and out to the street. So you can see from in here, we can start looking out past the courtyard to that streetscape beyond. I'm trying to find the best spot to view it from, so sorry for all the moving around. But you can see the tree canopies rising up overhead out in the streetscape beyond, and you get these borrowed views as if that garden streetscape were really part of the landscape of this house. And there is that, what we're looking at here is an artist studio, so that's Beck's studio where she works. And you can see that the big generous curve on that leads you out into the street again, and feels like I'm saying that streetscape is a continuation. This courtyard is a continuation of that streetscape. So this language of curves and the curved threshold between angled spaces continues right out into the garden. As we move out here, the deep shade awning overhead, the bluestone crazy paving, somewhere to put a table out, have an outdoor dinner party, and maybe open up to that street. There's actually, I haven't really mentioned, there's this big gate here. You're probably all wondering how they actually deal with security and privacy. So there's a really large timber gate here, which you can see swings shut on this arc. You can see this arc here, so they can close that down if they want to. But on weekends, Beck and Richard often report that they will have it open or partially open, and it becomes this point of connection with neighbours walking past, who will sometimes come down this path and tentatively or poke their head in and start a little chat, and that has led to neighbourly conversations, which is something maybe Beck and Richard might be able to talk about if anyone has questions about. So yeah, they're finding that they're really connecting with their neighbours in ways that they weren't before. But yeah, stepping out into this courtyard garden, where what you can see here, unfortunately, the day of the capture, we still do have some variation in the timber colour. All this timber has been oiled, but we're allowing to fade back to a grey, and because of the gate, it's still shadowing or protecting that timber a little bit, so it hasn't greyed off evenly yet. That'll happen in time. What you can see is that this awning strikes the level of the fascia board of the existing roof line, so it marks that level. Maybe I'll stand over here. I hope all this moving around isn't too disorienting for everybody. So that awning line continues the fascia, and you can see that line continues around and becomes the fence to the neighbour. And what that means, because all of the houses in this street, or many of the houses in this street, were built at the same time, and they were built to the same kind of levels, you can see that this fence then cuts out everything but the roof line of the neighbours, and so you just get, it almost looks as if the neighbour's roof springs off this fence. Little moments for nestled garden there, and I don't think the tour actually takes us into the studio, but you can see into the studio. This is Beck's studio in here. Yeah, we can't get in there, unfortunately, and you can see her view through a little, can I get back there? Through a little porthole window back out onto the street there. That little porthole window, perhaps a little reminder of Williamstown being close to the bay, and all of the kind of naval activity not so far away. So yeah, that's Beck's little studio in there. She sits at her desk, works in there, and is able to look out onto the street. We can also see if we step back from this studio that there's a gate here, and that gate leads into a service yard. So another challenge of a site like this is, so the front yard is the backyard, is your entertaining space coming off your living space. Where do you put all of that functional stuff like bins and hot water services and all the rest of it? So integrating that in a way which feels seamless was quite important. And from here, you're then able to move your way back out onto the street. So that I always like to think about, the cocktail party scenario where you're able to swing this gate wide open, throw the house, if I can get another view, throw the house and courtyard open, sorry for the moving around, throw the house and courtyard open to the street so that all your guests can kind of spill in and out. It's a bit of an unusual format, presenting without seeing your faces. What I might do now is, sorry if I haven't really left space through my presentation for questions so much, but I would like to open it up to the floor, if we can call it that, in this format. For anyone who has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I think Beck and Richard are happy to answer questions as well, and we can move back into the house, into any part of it that you'd like to see to answer those questions.
Michael, we actually had one earlier in the comments here, so I might read that out for you. It's someone's asking, Barbara's asking, how is the house heated?
So we've retained the, actually maybe Beck and Richard, do you want to maybe talk about how the heating works in terms of your comfort in this place?
Yeah, sure. So we've got, in the new section, we've got slab heating. So yeah, the floor at the moment is very toasty, comfortable, warm. And we actually find that the heating in the floor seems to kind of permeate through other parts of the house. So it does keep the house quite comfortable. We also have, what do we call it? Inverted heating, split system from the original house. So we've got one in the kind of office study area and one in the bedroom. So certainly while we've been all working from home, that's kind of a nice little extra bit of heat when you're sitting still for so long. But I think as well, yeah, but I think as well, because the house is all double brick, and even though there's a lot of glass in the addition, it is an incredibly well insulated house. So yeah, it stays pretty comfortable all year round, really.
It's something that on last year's tour, because it was a shoes off at the door scenario, it was something that was widely commented on as people moved into that area, the comfort of walking around on the slab and on the concrete slab, and how comfortable that feels underfoot, because it's got a wax finish on it, and the wax finish kind of has a silken quality to it, and combined with the heat, it actually feels quite luxurious in a way.
Yeah, true.
Hello, a question about the planning process. Was it difficult to get permission?
It was easy, yeah.
We came up against some real obstacles from council's heritage advisor, actually. They prefer to see pitched roofs sloped towards the street. They wanted to see eaves and gutters from the street.
At large?
What's that? And they wanted to see something which looked very much like the original house. which isn't what we've come across in other councils in terms of what they're looking for from a heritage point of view. But once we met with them down on the site and talked to them about how the site was working and the various challenges, and also showed them what we were trying to do in terms of really honouring that landscaped street heritage, and our dedication to that, and the way that that landscape street heritage was really permeating through the design of the whole house and was really the foundational principles for the design of the whole house. I think they came to appreciate what it was that we were trying to do, and from then it was fine.
So you
but it did take it. Sorry, go on.
So you educated.
Yeah, look, I wouldn't want to suppose so much, but I guess, you know, we had the benefit of having sat down and thought about it for a long time, and they come in and, you know, we're one of many applications. So, yeah, we needed to, I mean, I guess there are a lot of things built in this city where people aren't giving it that kind of consideration. So it might be easy to consider on first blush or to assume on first blush that someone's just trying to do their own crazy thing and that it isn't considered or it isn't sensitive. And so sometimes it just helps to have that conversation and show them what you're doing.
And just one other question: the windows, some of them curved, and was that a big cost?
Is that a big cost?
I'll say again. The curved windows, some of them curved. Yes.
Some of those. So one of the windows is curved, and I think I heard you ask whether or not that's a big cost.
Yes.
It's more expensive than flat glass, but I seem to remember our quantity surveyor who measures these things telling us that it was only a couple of $1,000s more expensive than the same area of straight glass. I suspect it's probably a little bit more, but the difference might be more than that. Unfortunately for the glass manufacturer, for the window manufacturer, I think it turned out to be an expense because it was installed and then the builder noticed that there was some dust, because it's a double glazed system. There was a little bit of dust caught between the two panes, and noticed that before any of us did, and sent it back for them to redo. So it may have proved to be an expense for them, unfortunately.
Yes. Thank you.
Michael, it's a beautiful house.
Thanks, Fiona.
I just wanted to ask about the process, about the decision of putting the studio on the front, and did that come from you or more from your clients, or how, you know, that's quite a strong gesture. How did it all begin?
That's a good question, and maybe Beck might have a different perspective on this than I will. So let's see how it unfolds. Beck already had a studio in the garden as a shed right on that boundary, and so there was already a pattern of going out into that other space as somewhere to do work, and we really just took our cue from that, and in a way it seemed like a natural thing to do, to have that separate space from the house to go and do your work. But it's also a convenient barrier to the street in a way. So a way of actually establishing something quite solid and with some a substantial amount of volume separating this protected courtyard from the street, which, you know, a fence would always feel a little bit thin. So having that really deep threshold felt like a nice opportunity, and then to integrate that with all the services next to it to create that sense of separation and protection from the street. Because when you do open it up like this, you want to feel like you're not separated from the public by just, you know, a thin fence, I suppose. But I don't know if Beck has another take on that.
Yeah, I was just trying to think back actually, because I have a feeling that the studio was kind of in and out of scope there for a little while when we weren't sure whether we could include it. But I remember, Michael, you coming up with this design like very, very early on. And it certainly wasn't something that I had thought about, only the fact that I did want the studio to be separate. I do like the idea of kind of going to a different location. And then there's just some practical aspects to it. I am very messy in the studio, and yeah, I generate a lot of wood dust and other dust, and I do spray painting and all sorts of things. So it needed to be separate from the main living area. Yeah, having it positioned and wrapping, kind of forming a bit of a wrapping around the courtyard was just an amazing solution to us, I think. Because I don't think we mentioned that we'd always had this dream of having an internal courtyard, and you created one, even though we didn't I don't think we specifically requested it, but
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was a really good solution. And yeah, it's actually only a few meters from where the original one was.
It's also quite sitting at that desk. I mean, I don't sit there and do my work, but being able to sit at the street and look out the window felt like a fairly special, privileged thing to be able to do, to sit right on the street and look out into that, look out onto that big strip of parkland and out onto those trees.
Yeah, I wave to people as they're taking their dogs for a walk and that sort of thing. Yeah, you always get people who kind of look in and you just do the friendly wave. So there's definite connection when you're in there.
I guess as much as anything, it was instead of like placing a studio, there was really about taking the fence down, because there'd always been a little studio building in the backyard, but with a big 6 foot plus black fence, wooden paling fence that went around. So it's really about taking that down. That gives people access through the windows to look in and to look out, to interact.
Yeah.
Michael, we've got another question here in the comments that came through, just asking which type of timber you've used for the art studio cladding.
Yeah. I believe that was a silver top ash. I should know that off the top. I should know that for sure. Beck, Richard, do you remember? Was that a silver top ash? I'm pretty sure it was.
I think so, yeah.
It's all looking pretty silvery now. Any questions? Feel free to jump in.
I think there was one from Joy asking about if there was any custom design specifically added for the art studio. So that's maybe any specific request we had for the art studio. If I've interpreted that correctly, I think my last little shed studio was 3 by 4 meters, and it was just packed full of art supplies and old artworks. So I wanted to get a few extra meters, which I got, which is great. Low maintenance, casual floor, because as I said, I'm very messy. So we've just got a very basic concrete floor in there, which is just easy to clean. And I've now, I think we've been over a year in, and I'm comfortable like getting paint with things now, so that's good. The other thing was, I think, some cross ventilation. So the round window that you saw in the studio, the one that faces out to the street, that actually opens, which means I can get that cross ventilation and keep the studio door open, the one that comes out into the courtyard. So they were the kind of just the key main things. Obviously a big workbench. And that was about it, I think. Good lighting. I think originally we were going to have a skylight in there, and then we decided that we didn't really need it, and I think that was the right decision.
Someone's actually asking whether or not they could, and they understand if this is not okay, but if they could ask how much the curved window cost.
Oh, I don't actually have a figure on that as its own separate cost. If I dug down into our paperwork, I'd be able to find the cost for all of the windows and doors together, but I actually don't have it as a separate cost. Sorry.
I don't either. Yeah.
No, we're just at the bottom line.
Yeah.
Everything. Yeah.
Yeah, we saw it's kind of the process of you see the bottom line and you take it all, or you take a couple of things out, and the curved glass is there.
Yeah.
You take stuff out and then you put stuff back in throughout the project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The curved glass really has it has a bit of a magical quality to it. It's a bit hard to pick up on exactly just looking at it like this, because it's a bit of a dynamic thing, but it really it's almost like when you get close to the curve, you almost can't perceive exactly where it is because of all of its kind of reflections and refractions, and it creates like an almost underwatery kind of feeling. There is something kind of magical about a bit of curved glass like that, which pays for itself.
Someone was asking what direction we're facing. So that glass all faces a sort of a southeast, and we get, or southeast really, and we get the morning light coming through, and then we're kind of shielded from the afternoon sun in the summer. And is there a garage or is there street parking? No, just about everybody on our street does street parking. We've all got the driveways that cover that sort of that 15-metre sort of verge or nature strip or whatever it might be. Most people use that as their parking spot.
Yeah, in terms of the orientation, usually we like to try and get a northern orientation with a deep eave on it where possible, but not every site allows you to do that, I suppose. And then it was really just about, bringing in, a really generous amount of natural light so it would feel nice and light filled, providing some shade where we needed it, so if north is effectively towards that mirrored window there from where we're standing, you do still get potentially some of the high summer sun coming over into this space, if not for this shade canopy overhead as well. So it's about trying to get the best of the light and control the worst of it.
And in the morning, those I don't know what you'd call it, those beams create lovely patterns. On the Architecture website, there's lots of photographs. They do some photography in the morning, and it creates some lovely zigzag patterns on the outside of the building and on the inside as well.
Got another question here. How does the large aperture work? There are no central supports in the curve, is the question.
Okay, structurally.
Yeah.
Yeah, no idea. So, is it still staying up, actually? So maybe better if I go outside. Essentially, there's columns here and here in the wall. And then there's a large curved steel lintel, which goes all the way across the top of the curved glass and door. And then there's another column on this side over here. And then that lintel is also then stabilized by structure, by roof structure coming off the boundary wall. Hope that answers that question.
Steel. The answer.
Oh, I didn't show you the bathroom. Bonus for those who have stuck around into question time. So this used to be effectively third bedroom, but as Beck and Richard will report, a kind of unusably small.
Yeah, it was very dark too. So it was kind of dark, small, and we tried to do a few things with it to try and convert it into a usable space, and it never worked.
It turns out small bedrooms make quite large bathrooms.
Yeah. Magic.
What do you think, Victoria? Are there more questions coming through?
There was a question, how long was the design process from start to finish of the house? I think we had a first meeting with you, Michael, like June 2016.
Yeah.
And I think the concept was locked in pretty quickly. That seemed to come together quickly and very well. And then we moved in January 2019.
Yeah, so just over, so 2.5 years. Just over 2.5 years.
For construction as well, yeah.
With construction as well. Yeah. I mean, the design concept came together fairly quickly, and the approach came together fairly quickly. And then from there, how long was the construction in the end? Was it 9 months?
10 months in the end.
10 months. So 10 months of that was construction, which was probably, it's probably a long construction. And so, there's usually about 18 months from us being engaged to the point where you're ready to start construction. And there's a whole lot of processes that just happen through that in terms of getting your planning permits. Just the iterative process of there's a design concept, but then there's refining that concept into the design of all its various elements, and working with Richard and Beck to refine those to the point where it's doing what they need it to do, and then working with all the various other consultants, particularly structural engineer, to solve its various challenges, environmental ratings to ensure that it's performing thermally well, and all the other things that go into really refining a design to the point where it's really going to work beyond just being a neat concept. And then there's tendering. You know, you tender a project to builders and get prices back, and then refine those prices and choose your builder, and then negotiate any changes, the final scope, and then start construction. So there is a bit of a process there. Sometimes it can surprise people when we say, you know, it's usually going to be about 2 years from start to finish. But there's as Beck and Richard can attest to, there's a lot of stuff that happens in between.
There's questions about not quite understanding how the wall,
the giant gate
swings out. I was thinking we have, it's about 3/4 open at the moment because it's a Sunday afternoon. If I turn this around, not quite sure if people can see that with the gate, that's not sort of on the wall anymore. It's 3/4 open, and it's
like a third open.
Yeah, it's like a third open. So you can, you can sort of, you can still see in from the street to the corner, to the living room sort of part. But it kind of is quite opaque. I know you probably can't tell with the light, but it's quite opaque from our perspective and for people looking in. So in fact, I think we'll go outside.
Here we go, live tour.
Yeah. So there's the gate, and you can move that along. At the moment we've got it. That's the wall that in Michael's the screen that Michael's sharing. Yeah, the wall is covered by the gate, but we can just move it open like that and have it closed. So it gives us privacy and security, particularly midweek when we're at work most of the time, when we're not doing pandemic thing. It's on the weekends and so on that we'll have it out, because we'll be working in the garden one afternoon and just leaving it out.
Does that mean you move the furniture along that wall? Now I see the gate. Okay.
Williamstown North.
Yeah, so in my view, we're seeing the chair and the plants along there. So they're there in their cocktail party scenario, really, aren't they?
We'll have to get you that cocktail party, Michael.
Yeah. Got more questions coming through there?
There was one about the kitchen splashback, and have we sealed it, or how have we sealed it?
That's a good question.
That is a good question. We have done some, we did put a seal on it. It is a bit of a challenge just because of the bagging on the brick. It is very textured. So there is a seal on it, but as you can imagine, just with a textured wall, you know, if you get spattering from something cooking on the stove, it's still a little bit tricky to get off. We do actually want to try another sealing. I know Michael got a sample of it at one point. I think we're all not 100% sure how that was going to work, and it does pick up. It still picks up a bit of oil and that sort of thing. Here in this shot, you'll see that we do have like a ply panel behind the stove just to protect it.
Yeah, so So there is a seal. Yeah, there is a sealant. So you haven't tried that sealant yet, have you?
No, not yet.
So yeah, there's a sealant which you can apply to that bagging, which makes it non-penetrative, which is not supposed to create any great color shift, so that you don't notice that it's there, but it stops the oils soaking into it. But I mean, the chopping board looks good there for the moment.
I was going to say, what we were playing around with, we've got that bar across where we can hang utensils and pans and so on, and we were looking at, maybe even like having a splashback hanging off that. So we've made some holes and so on in that, but at the moment it's just sitting up, just resting up like that. Perhaps we could have taken it down for the photos, but we forgot.
Yeah. There was another question from Ryan. So just interested in an insight on the choice to put the glazing on the interior side of that wall versus the exterior. I guess that's the curved area. Yeah.
Yeah. It was really about having a sense of, from inside, having a sense of that brick wall and that brick kind of wall underneath the window and the glass feeling like one kind of continuous smooth curve all the way through. There's something it's got a slightly mercurial quality to it in that sense, rather than that kind of stepping in and out. And then on the outside, it provides another spot where you can kind of sit outside and have a chat as well. Whereas inside, you've got your built-in bench seat and your sofa and your dining table doing that work.
I actually like that depth that you get. All along there is galvanized steel. And yeah, just that feeling of solidness, of being kind of protected. I just love the look of that depth. I think it just really adds to that kind of coziness that you get.
Yeah, it's a little bit like you've got that depth in there that feels like a protective kind of barrier, and then you've got the depth of this shade awning overhead, which again makes you feel like you're being sheltered from the outside. And then you've got the depth of that studio again to the street, so that even though everything here feels quite open and loosely connected through the living spaces into the courtyard out to the street, that there are still those elements which make you feel like you're still kind of protected and enclosed in some way.
Our cat likes sitting out there on that ledge and wandering around like a museum exhibit.
All right. Are there more questions there, Beck, or
I'm just having a look through, just making sure that we haven't missed anything. I think that's it.
Okay. Well, unless anyone wants to jump on and ask a quick video question, I'll give you a few moments to.
I'd like to make a comment how creative it is and so fascinating, so unique, really.
Thanks, Alan. Thank you. Yeah, we put our hearts into it. So yeah, we all love the result. Thank you. Well, thanks for all coming along. Sorry again for the time mix up earlier. Hopefully everybody's managed to get in and come on the tour or watch the recording. Thanks to Beck and Richard for making their place available and for the generosity of showing us around and answering questions. And thanks to Open House Melbourne for inviting us to be part of the program. Enjoy the rest of your Open House Melbourne weekend. You normally would be waving and saying goodbye, and someone would be walking over to me and bailing me up in the corner and asking me a few more questions and going for a little bit of a walk around the house. I guess we can't do that here, but this virtual tour of the house is there on the Open House Melbourne website, so you can go through and take yourself around it there. Also, if you want to see more photos of it, you can go to our website, which is the Architecture website, which is arch.com.au. So you can see more photos of it there. Thanks for coming along, and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thanks.
Thanks, Michael.